The NFL is currently experiencing significant instability in the coaching market, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and this directly impacts the Dallas Cowboys. There is much to be discussed regarding the team's coaching staff, particularly after significant changes in other franchises that have completely altered the league's landscape. The firing of Sean McDermott by the Buffalo Bills was one of the most relevant moves in this recent period and immediately raised questions about its potential impact on the Cowboys' search for a new defensive coordinator. McDermott's departure created another head coaching position and further expanded a market already saturated with uncertainty and interconnected decisions. Before we move on, a direct and necessary request. If you closely follow NFL news and want to continue receiving complete and up-to-date analysis of the Dallas Cowboys, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and join the conversation in the comments. This engagement makes a difference in ensuring this type of content continues to reach you. The impact of McDermott's dismissal goes beyond a simple change in leadership for the Bills. With this decision, the NFL has seen a significant number of head coaching changes directly impacting the defensive coordinator market. Some teams have already filled their vacancies, while others are still searching for solutions, creating a domino effect that slows down the process and makes it more strategic. The Titans, Giants, and Falcons have already made decisions about their coaches, while other franchises are still analyzing scenarios, including the Dolphins and Titans, who are showing signs of progress in their processes. In this context, many teams also need to define their defensive coordinators. There are franchises trying to maintain continuity, such as the Browns, who are considering retaining Jim Schwartz, and the Dolphins, who may try to keep Anthony Weaver. The Falcons, in turn, managed to keep Jeff, ending any possibility of him taking the defensive position in Dallas, despite the Cowboys having previously requested an interview. With this, the number of potential openings for defensive coordinator remains high, including teams like the Cowboys, Jets, and Commanders, who have retained their head coaches but still need to fill this crucial position. In addition to the open positions, there is an expectation that more openings will arise if some defensive coordinators are promoted to head coaches in other franchises. The reality is that a significant portion of the NFL could end up in the market looking for a new defensive coordinator. This large-scale movement makes the process more competitive and requires patience from teams that want to make a well-informed choice. The Dallas Cowboys, for their part, have a significant advantage in this scenario. The team has already begun in-person interviews and is ahead of many franchises in this regard. Still, this doesn't mean the decision will be quick. There are many dominoes that still need to fall, and some candidates may prefer to wait for greater clarity before making a commitment. This includes, for example, professionals awaiting the outcome of head coaching opportunities, or who prefer to analyze the market more calmly. So far, the Cowboys' recruitment process points to a defined group of finalists for the defensive coordinator position. Among them are Dante Jones, Jonathan Gannon, Christian Parker, and Jim Leonard. Of these names, only Dante Jones has had an in-person interview. According to internal reports, the impression left by Jones was quite positive. He was seen as an efficient communicator, confident in his ideas, and someone who positively surprised during the process, something considered fundamental by the Cowboys in this search. The team's attention now turns to the reception of Jonathan Gannon, whose interview was surrounded by scheduling adjustments, something common in this type of process. Christian Parker also has an interview scheduled, while Jim Leonard is still awaiting clearance to participate in person. The fact that Leonard has not yet been able to be interviewed does not remove him from the competition. It only adds another variable to the timing of the process. Dante Jones has an extensive track record, with stints at the Dolphins, Vikings, Bengals, and a challenging experience as defensive coordinator at LSU. Since then, he has been working under Brian Flores, serving as defensive backs coach and defensive passing coordinator. However, there is uncertainty surrounding his future, as it is unclear whether he would accept a defensive coordinator position outside of Minnesota, depending on how Flores' situation unfolds. Even so, including Jones always made sense within the Cowboys' search. He was on the initial list of candidates, and his interview reinforced that choice. Still, the central point of this process is not just choosing a name, but conducting a thorough and structured search. Brian Schottenheimer made it clear that the goal is to carry out a real evaluation process, something the franchise historically doesn't usually do in depth for this type of role. The Cowboys could technically hire a defensive coordinator at any time, provided there was an agreement between the parties. However, the decision seems to be moving towards respecting each stage of the search, listening to all relevant candidates before a final decision. This includes waiting for pending interviews, even if there is a front-runner behind the scenes. This scenario raises an inevitable discussion about whether to wait or act. There are clear risks in waiting, such as the possibility of losing a candidate to another team. On the other hand, accelerating the process may mean giving up the chance to choose the best available profile. Furthermore, many candidates are also observing the market and may prefer to wait for developments before making a final decision. The NFL market, especially regarding the Cowboys' defense, is deeply interconnected. The search for a coach is intertwined with the NFL market, and each NFL interview depends on external factors. The Cowboys' coaching search is happening during a period of broad league transition, with impacts that could extend into NFL 2025. The debate over whether to wait or act quickly gained even more weight as other names began to be considered in the market. Jonathan Gannon, for example, appears as an option that generates less enthusiasm in the current context precisely because he resembles a familiar profile. For some analysts, he represents a more traditional model, something closer to previous Dallas Cowboys choices, while the expectation of some fans revolves around something new, less predictable, and potentially more innovative. In contrast, Christian Parker emerges as a name that sparks curiosity. His rapid rise within coaching staffs is noteworthy and reinforces the idea that the NFL interview process needs to go beyond the obvious. The very way the coach search is conducted shows that there is interest in evaluating different profiles, even if this requires more time and patience. The same reasoning applies to the possibility, however distant, of awaiting decisions involving Brian Flores, keeping doors open while the NFL market continues to move. Other scenarios also come into play. There's a chance that names initially considered might not become available, such as Jim Schwartz, whose current team may make every effort to retain him, either as defensive coordinator or even in a higher position. These uncertainties broaden the number of variables and reinforce that the process doesn't depend solely on the Cowboys' wishes, but on decisions happening throughout the league. Jim Leonard, in turn, represents a central point in this discussion. Even if he is not unanimously considered the primary choice, there is a clear understanding that interviewing him is part of a more complete and responsible process. Waiting for his availability can be seen as a risk, but also as an investment in the quality of the final decision. This type of approach deviates from the franchise's historical pattern and indicates an attempt to change how strategic decisions are made. The absence of haste does not mean a lack of attention. There is an awareness that waiting too long could result in losing important candidates if they accept offers from other teams. Even so, the argument in favor of patience rests on the idea that a more thorough process increases the chances of finding the right profile to lead the Cowboys' defense. This balance between risk and caution defines the franchise's current situation. Within this context, an unexpected name emerges that further broadens the debate. Sean McDermott, recently released from the Buffalo Bills, enters the conversation as a coaching possibility. With previous experience as a defensive coordinator in Philadelphia and Carolina, he brings a relevant track record and deep knowledge of the defensive side of the ball. His past includes professional collaboration with John Harbaugh, a detail that adds context to his profile within the NFL. The big question, however, is whether McDermott would be willing to return to the role of defensive coordinator after so many years as a head coach. There are examples of experienced coaches who have made similar moves, while others have chosen to seek new opportunities as head coaches or even take a break to reorganize their careers. In McDermott's case, there is a perception that he may still be considered for higher positions in other franchises, which makes his availability uncertain. The recent history of similar transitions that didn't work as expected also weighs heavily, generating caution among the public. Still, there's an interpretation that the defensive problems faced by his former team were more related to roster issues than necessarily to his coaching ability. This keeps the debate open and reinforces how the Cowboys' coaching search involves multiple layers of analysis. Ultimately, what we see is a process that reflects the broader state of the NFL. The league is experiencing a period of profound change, with direct impacts on team planning and the NFL market as a whole. For the Dallas Cowboys, the choice of the next defensive coordinator is not just a one-off decision, but part of a process that can influence the team's performance in the coming seasons, with effects already projected for NFL 2025. The public is attentively following each step, understanding that it's not just about names, but about method, patience, and a long-term vision. The expectation revolves around a decision that represents not only technical competence, but also a new standard of leadership within the organization.